It's not a recreational experience, but it's a serious medicine. It's not about, seeing visions or having a good time. It's going to make you work on in order to deal with your shadow. Beautiful plant intelligence looks deep inside you, looks as if it were into the blueprint of your soul. See where you've come from, see where your ancestors have been through, because we do carry ancestral information, ancestral trauma, and sees where you have been in your life, the nooks and crannies of your own experiences, things that you may have even forgotten about or parked or created secret cavities so you don't have to experience that anymore. And it sees all of that. Plus, it sees what you could be.
Welcome to the show. This is my very, very dear friend and a mentor of sorts, a shaman, a person who's taken me places I never dreamed I would go. Don Roberto, he goes by, and this is an interesting story. So now, when I introduced you, I mentioned that you were someone who had taken me on a spiritual journey. So I want to start kind of by knowing, just from your perspective, what are you about? What's your mission? What do you want?
Wow, that's a beautiful, direct question. What am I about? What's my mission? What do I want? Well, I never intended to be on this path. It wasn't something I went to the school's career officer and said, hey, look, this is my profile. What do you think I should be doing? Librarian or shaman? So this has really revealed itself and through a certain set of discoveries. And so I was, at the time, living in Taiwan. I was teaching English. I was more into my photography than anything else. And then one day what happened was somebody basically knocked on my virtual doorstep on Facebook and said, hey, let's be friends. Back in the day, friend requests and all that. But so I looked at what they're interested in, and they said shamanism and ayahuasca. So the thing is, I'd read about ayahuasca about 20 years previous to that, because Michael Harner, who's a famous anthropologist and a teacher of shamanism, had written a key book called The Way of the Shaman. He was an anthropologist. Well, he's passed on now, but he was an anthropologist that was looking at the Amazonian ethnographies and stuff that's happening in there. And he came across the Shipibo and the Jivaro people in Peru. And he learned that they had this kind of medicine called ayahuasca that could transport you and show you different realities. And so suddenly in 2007, I was faced with this friend request from somebody living not so far from me in Taiwan. And basically, there it is, shamanism and ayahuasca. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I wrote to him and said, how come you're interested in ayahuasca since it's a Peruvian thing and we're living in Asia? He goes, the thing is, we have the same plants here that do the same thing. And I was like, really? How interesting. So a week passes, and then I have an invitation to have lunch with a PhD student, a business student studying for a PhD. And so we have lunch in a neighboring city. And so it was a very straightforward, talking about this and that, nothing esoteric. And at the end of the lunch, he said, I have a present for you. And he leans down into his briefcase and pulls out this jar of brown liquid. And I said to him, I look at it and I go, I don't drink coffee. He goes, no, my friend, this is not coffee. This is ayahuasca. So 2 people in the same week from the same city, different city to mine. So I said, do you know this guy? And I mentioned the first guy. And he goes, no, never heard of him. So I'm saying, okay, hello. Hello, there are signs and there are augurs and omens. And if you have 2 people who don't know each other, and think about it, I'm as far away from Peru as you could manage, living, in Asia. So I'm like, okay, right. I get the message. There's something here for me. I'm going to pay attention. So the first guy basically comes back to me and he says, hey, we're going to be doing a ceremony during Chinese New Year, which is a holiday period for us. Would you like to participate? And I was like, hell yeah, of course. I mean, you'd be stupid not to get the signals, the invitations, and not respond. So basically, so 6 weeks to go. I prepped up. There were certain things you had to not eat, and you couldn't engage in sexual activity, etc., etc. So I prepped up, and we drank it. And so half an hour later, and it was vile. It was really, really not very pleasant. Half an hour later, my tummy is gurgling away, going, maybe this wasn't the best idea ever. And then I rushed out into the garden and I purged in the flower bed. Blech. And then I felt better. And then I looked around and there was a guy, just maybe 6 feet away from me. And I looked at him and his head was on fire. It was like I could see the flames. I was like, this is strong stuff. And then he looked like a Tibetan demon. You know, you see them in the Tanka paintings, you know, the classic demon thing. And I was like, okay, this is really strong. And so then what happened then is that my whole body began to really feel possessed by an incredible energy, like a cosmic energy. And luckily they had put tents down in the garden. And within the darkness, I felt the presence of an intelligence within me. I was like, you know, when you're in the room with somebody who's super, super smart, and you just feel that level of intelligence. So there I was alone in the tent with this intelligence within me. And then I had this epiphany. I realized, I said to myself, you know what, this is not recreational. B, this is really serious. And C, this is not a drug. What I just imbibed was not a liquid, was not a chemical. It was not a drug. It was a living spirit, because that's what I could feel inside me. I felt this intelligent living presence. And then I think along with that epiphany was this crumbling of any ego and complete humility, like, oh my goodness. And so then what happened is I got this telepathic message, which is basically this presence intelligence to me. And he said, let me show you what happens when you die, after you die. So bang, suddenly, I'm in the state of consciousness, which is consciousness without a body. So if you think that when we're alive, we are contained within a three-dimensional vessel, and it keeps us bounded in certain ways, and consciousness is dependent on our five senses and our thoughts. And here, once I've been released from the container of the body, consciousness then became extraordinarily expansive, infinite in a way. It was almost, I don't know if you know New York or something like that, but you look across the Hudson River and this is the most enormous, or even Colorado or the Grand Canyon, you have the most enormous landscapes and the most enormous skies. So basically that was the actual the grandeur of it. And at the same time, I realized to myself, wait a second, I recognize this state of being, the state of consciousness. And if I recognize it, that means I've been through this before. This post-death state is somehow familiar to me at a consciousness level. You know, it's not something you can access every day, but it's definitely there somewhere encapsulated within the consciousness. So suddenly I was like, well, if I've done that, first of all, I thought to myself, holy moly, you know, the Tibetans know what they're talking about. They really know what they're talking about. That was my first thought. Yeah. And secondly, then if I recognize this state of consciousness, then I've been there before. Therefore, I've lived and died before. Therefore, what is there to be afraid of? Because there's this continual thread of consciousness that weaves its way through time and space. So, and there was no dialogue between myself and this presence. It was just simply showing me, helping me to remember. And I came away from that experience truly humbled, because it was a direct experience. There was no mediation, nothing to believe. It was just direct showing me. And the thing is, I recognized it on such a deep level. So I came out of that experience saying, oh my God, I know nothing. I have all these years of formal academic study. I've traveled the world. I've been searching and looking. And here we have an experience. Oh, and also to tell you that the level of energy inside my body was as if I'd been directly plugged into grid of creation. That's exactly the way to explain it. Even inside my teeth, they felt alive. Every cell was humming with the hymn of the universe, basically. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I came away saying, oh my God, I think I found what I've been looking for all my life, but I'd never been able to express it, because here is this experience that is so transcendent and so powerful and so there's no way I could negate this or deny this or question it. It was so in my face, to use an Americanism, that where do I go from here? And the only thing I could say to myself is like, okay, scrub everything you know. Let's start from zero and explore this and discover, you know, what else is this? Because, you know, you mentioned earlier about religion and spirituality, but here was the direct experience of the divine, of the transcendent, of a level that is way, way, way beyond human conception. And so that's the basis of my knowing, of how I'm orientated now, that there is a grandeur, there are levels that do exist beyond human awareness, conception, and familiarity.
Before I get into my experience, I think that's a very significant point to establish the legitimate spiritual nature of this is medicine. It is a living organism. Describe to us the preparation and what's that about?
Well, essentially, there's going to be a physical preparation, which is to ensure that your body is receptive to this medicine, that it's not cluttered with, alcohol, or it's not cluttered with heavy meats or toxins. So we recommend that people specifically eat a bit lighter and avoid certain things that could be contraindicated in terms of they won't work very well with the medicine. So, for example, pork is contraindicated, that the plants don't seem to like pork across the board. We also contraindicate things like fermented foods, because if they are in your system when you drink the medicine, how the medicine works is that partially it switches off enzymes in your tummy so that you can absorb the DMT that is contained within the medicine. If it didn't have this two-part process, then you wouldn't be able to have that kind of doorway open. So in closing off certain, if you eat things that need those enzymes and are still in your system, like cheese or pickles, then you're going to have a very rough time once those enzymes are shut down and the food is still in your system somehow. So that's why there's a kind of a period where we say don't eat these kind of foods. They're not bad per se, but they will kind of clash with the medicine. So there's that. There's
what
also
about sex?
It's a topic. Well, if you're having sexual relations with somebody else, then you're going to be mixing not only physical touch but energetics as well. And that's we withdraw from sexual activity in order to become much more contained rather than diffusing our energy. And even we advise people not to masturbate as well, because then the energy is not so diffused. So it's for an ayahuasca ceremony, we'd say 7 days would be really good. And also it's a test. If you can't hold yourself back for 7 days, how the hell can you face a numinous, transcendent, earth-shattering experience like ayahuasca if you can't even control yourself? So sometimes there's a good reason for these restrictions or guidelines, but it's also in the mindset for preparing for this and realizing the gravity of what you're about to do. It's not a recreational experience. I know it's become kind of trending and it's on a people list. But it's a serious medicine. It's not about seeing visions or having a good time. It's going to make you work in order to deal with your shadow. But we'll come back to that in a minute. So you're asking me about shamanism, right? What is a shaman? Well, a shaman is someone essentially like you or me. Essentially, we're normal people. It's not that we go around having a cup of tea, seeing fairies, or walking down the street and seeing dead people. It's not about that. It's that we can shift our consciousness when required to be able to go into an altered state of consciousness to navigate that territory and to come back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
These states of consciousness are part of human heritage, but it does take a little bit of training to be able to go into them at will, or using perhaps drumming or dance or fasting or cave darkness meditation in order to activate the process. But there is a discipline around that.
So when I had the experience, yes, it wasn't a high. In fact, for example, after a while, I would wake up and go, I need to pee. And I would stand up, and I'm not wobbly. I'm not confused. I'm not disoriented. I'm like, oh, toilet's over there. Hey, Robert, how you doing? Nice singing. And then I come back, and then I lay back down, and whoosh was my experience. I'm curious to know.
So the whoosh is you're back into the experience. You're not necessarily having to navigate the toilet experience. You can go back into your deep internal.
Correct. And not only that, I'm back where I left off consistently. First journey was chaotic and it was kind of a battle. It was very all over a lot of places and everything about it. And I remember the mountains and the faces and the deities and all these things that I experienced was unique to me. And the next one was extraordinarily beautiful and enlightening. But to get up and go and pee, I would come back. Hey, Robert, how you doing, man? Keep it up. I'm going to lay down. And I remember laying down going, okay, yeah, I hope I didn't miss something. I hope I don't jump into this. I don't know. And there you are. Exactly where I left off.
So let me put it this way. There's no standard ayahuasca experience that you could say, oh yeah, you're definitely going to go this, and this. Basically, some people are going to have a lot of visions because that's where the teaching comes from. Some people are going to have no visions. Maybe they'll get insights or downloads, or maybe they have to go through a lot of purging because the system is so clogged up, either physically or emotionally or practically, whatever it is. So that's their journey for this time. And some people even, they drink, they lie down, and within 30 seconds, they're out. They're out for the whole evening. They're like asleep. And around them can be like asleep, really completely asleep. And there can be this whole cacophony of crying or purging around them the whole 5 hours. And then towards the end, they come back out and they go, did I miss something, right? What did I miss? Oh my God. And they sometimes think that they've actually not been on a journey or it didn't work. But actually, usually what's happening is that the medicine is working on such a deep level that actually the plant itself says, this person's mind is too interfering. It'll interfere with the process. I need them just to park that mind, go deep into a deep sleep while I do whatever I need to do in order to help them reconfigure and defrag all the rubbish that's inside them, right? So, and they may be initially upset, but then they come back to me a week later and say, wow, I don't know what happened, but everything, all my perceptions have shifted, my relations have shifted. So there's definitely work going on. So I have very few axioms or principles in this work, but one of them is that the medicine, whatever it's doing, is working, even when it looks like it's not actually working, because it's going to be doing something at some level, and you may not even be able to see it. You may not even be able to understand it because you've had 2 sessions, right? You've had 2 sessions. So maybe in this session 1, some things may have happened there that don't make sense until you've had more data points to have some perspective on it.
Sure.
Back on it and you go, because it's random, it's out of context, it hasn't got anything you can necessarily position it within. I've had that experience myself, like maybe a year later I go, now I understand what happened in session 2. This is where it was leading to. So what I'm saying is that there's this intelligence, this intelligence, there's an arc, there's a trajectory, there's an arc of healing that this beautiful plant intelligence looks deep inside you, looks as if it were into the blueprint of your soul. See where you've come from, see where your ancestors have been through, because we do carry ancestral information, ancestral trauma, and sees where you have been in your life, the nooks and crannies of your own experiences, things that you may have even forgotten about or parked or created secret cavities so you don't have to experience it anymore. And it sees all of that. Plus, it sees what you could be. It sees the potential. It sees that you at your highest level, or the expression of who you could be, and it works. That's my. You ask me, what am I going for? So this work isn't about me. This work is about me creating a container so that the medicine can work, so that I can step aside and just gently guide it so everything keeps fairly under control, and then you yourself, plus in conjunction with the medicine, work to become the best you can be. Yeah. And often what happens is that because you are dialoguing essentially with the voice of nature, the direct connection to nature, there's this very, very powerful, re-imprinting that happens on a spiritual level or a soul level in terms of who you are. Sometimes in this work, you have to go so powerfully into unwinding your conceptions of who you are, of looking at all the narratives that are within your life. And some of those narratives are so old and so unserving, do not serve you anymore, that they have to be jettisoned. And so in releasing this, you create new space in your life to really manifest who you truly are, your essence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. What amazing miracles have you seen in your work over the years?
Well, essentially, I've come to these conclusions about what the medicine is doing by looking at the results. So I can track people, and they come in often, maybe not in the best of mental states, or they're a bit lost in their direction. And just through clearing out, defragging all the stuff that doesn't need to be, there, then they actually have much more clarity, and they're able to bring forth their essence or their highest potential. And you see that in it, maybe 6 months down the road, they start living more cleanly, more organically, or they're more aligned with their life purpose. There was one guy that came in dressed in all kind of gothic, right? 6 months later, he's riding a motorbike dressed in the most colorful clothes possible. So he's really blossoming, and I could see it in his life choices. So it's nothing that I'm doing. It's just they're stepping out of their old stories, out of the old containers, and really embracing all the possibilities they truly could be. Does that make sense? So those are miracles. So people come for various reasons. Sometimes it is a religious impulse or a spiritual impulse to know the transcendent. It is maybe to clear some of the stuff from the past that they've inherited, or they may have erroneous self-beliefs that are limiting them, or just simply they're curious. Some people say no, curiosity isn't enough, and I think actually no, curiosity is a great starting point, because you're open. That's all I'm asking people. I ask people not to believe in anything except the possibility that this might work. So I take a Gnostic position. I say, look, I'm not a guru. I'm not here with superior knowledge, because fundamentally, if you're here, you are a survivor of a 2 billion year process of evolution. So you have everything within you. All the secrets of the universe are encoded in your being. It's just that you may have forgotten. You may not have direct access to them. So people experience things and learn things, and that direct experience is the teaching. Does that make sense? And no one can take that away from you. If they connect with higher levels of intelligence or the divine or the transcendent, that's their experience. There's no middleman. They know something that is incomprehensible. So let me ask you, what changed for you between before you were doing this and then after you had these two experiences?
Very clearly, I can say that I had years before lost my religion, in a sense. No, I had lost my religion. I'd gone through a divorce, and that really skewed what I was interpreting as God and marriage. In my own perfect, that was my me blend with my kids. I ended up divorced, which is probably me in midlife. Whatever the reasons are, there it is. Lost my religion, and I was in a world of extreme happiness, drinking and smoking and partying, and I was happy. I was laughing with friends, but coming into you were very clear about what is your question. Make sure have a question. Go into it with a question. And I like intention. Yeah. And I like that when I do meditation. I like that when I'm coaching people. Anytime you approach a situation, go in with a question. Go to bed, ask yourself a question. And these things, ask and you shall receive. It's in all canon. So my question was to really kind of clarify again, what is going on with God and universe and all this, because the world's pretty cool and I'm pretty happy. I miss that, but I don't want to go back to that, because I'm still bitter and confused, and I was probably hungover. But I did pretty well detox for that session, but not a 1 week. I know I didn't, and neither did anybody else in that room, by the way. But we did make improvements, and so that was for me, was again, and this is what's interesting, Roberto. I had a glimpse beyond the veil, as it were, a pierce into the God that is in me, right? That is in me, that is in everybody. And then you start to see that, and this reconnected me. Now, that was 10 years ago or something. It was about 10 years ago.
It was, isn't it?
And that began a process that has brought me it has not stopped, I think, on a spiritual growth. I have grown spiritually since that time, and it marked a bit of it connected me again and has led me on my own path.
has it informed or influenced the way you relate to people?
Absolutely. Now when I hear people complain or whatever, I can go, okay, that there's a difference between who you really are and who you are right now. And so I think that there's a couple
also
ways.
who you think you are as well.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's a limitation.
Yeah. And ayahuasca was an avenue that kind of exploded that and accelerated that. And I feel that I was prepared for that. And I feel like it was preparatory for where I am today.
I love the way you've used the word catalyst, because that's exactly what it is. It really does bootstrap you far faster, far greater than conventional counseling or therapeutics, because it's the way I see it is that imagine you're in a valley and you can only see the valley, but the plant intelligence is on the top of the mountain. It can see all the valleys around it, and it can see far, far greater. And so when that kind of comes in as a resource, as a support resource, it can lift you up to where that, the top of the mountain, so to speak, much more rapidly. You had to spiral around and get lost and all that. It could just say, here, take a look. This is really what's resident within you. This is your potential, without the kind of baggage or the stories. It says, you have a direct experience of your own transcendence in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about, for some people who have a very strict religious mindset, for you to say, I recognize myself as part of God or whatever, that would almost verge on blasphemy. But it's not really, because, you're part of the ocean that surrounds us. There's no difference. But except that recognition of that is transformative in its own right.
There's a large community, and I'm part of that community, that says, what's the science behind this? The science of why this works and what's going on, you need documentation. What are the risks? Because it's a narcotic.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that labeling of it within a certain historical, social environment. I mean, it's not a narcotic in its birthplace. Within Peru and Ecuador and Brazil, it's seen as a sacrament. It's seen as a holy thing. And so it's not seen as something illicit or illegal. That's very much a Western conception. And if I just trace back to how that became part of the mindset of law enforcement, back in 1971, the US was trying to prohibit just about anything that could expand the mind. And it forced through with the United Nations, the Convention on Psychotropic Substances, 1971. And he said, look, this has DMT in it, let's ban it. And Peru and Ecuador just basically said, no, we cannot ban something that is part of our historical heritage. How dare you even assume that you could impose this or not? And they refused to sign that part of the declaration or the convention. And so it's so interesting how different cultures come to view something, and that's why I would say I'm trained in the Amazonian tradition, so I definitely don't see it as a narcotic. I don't see myself as a vendor of drug experience.
And just to clarify, how is this product made? Where does it come from? Just so everyone knows.
Okay, although it's seen as a single substance, there are two elements to it. One is the vine, the actual ayahuasca vine, it's the name of it. And the other one is, it can be a variety of secondary components. It could be chacruna leaves, or it could be chaliponga, or jurima, or it could be acacia. Anything that contains sufficient amounts of DMT. But the real engine of this is the ayahuasca vine. The real spirit of this is the ayahuasca vine that switches off the enzymes in the stomach, as I mentioned, so that it allows a secondary component to enter the bloodstream. Now, from a scientific viewpoint, what I'm going to say is that what I see happening through my own experiences is that the shift in consciousness, in brainwave activity, from beta, which is every day crossing the road, getting to the toilet, all that kind of thing, and then we go into alpha, which is the more kind of relaxed, or even like one kind of entranced state, watching television, etc. And then we're going into theta. And theta is very much a state where deep healing can occur. It's very much a meditative state. It's very much almost Alice in Wonderland, dream-like quality to it. So, and if you go beyond them, you go into delta, where you fall asleep. So there's this space, there's this line through, continuing through theta, almost to delta, where it's hypnagogic. You know that point where you're falling asleep, and suddenly you get images coming to you or insight. That's very the consciousness or the brainwave activity. So it slows down essentially, and so at the same time there is a movement from the left hemisphere, which is logically orientated and spatially oriented, towards the right hemisphere. So we're stepping down in brainwave activity, and we're moving from left to right, and so we're moving into a kind of an Alice in Wonderland experience, if you like, where the walls of reality begin to shimmer and the actual way things work. So it becomes more like a dreamlike experience. And so if you're very logic orientated and you're very, very dependent on controlling your experience, that's going to be a little bit difficult if you cannot move into a more flexible responsiveness to that dream experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's perfect.
And because you're moving to the right hemisphere, because you're moving to theta, the ability to heal trauma is elevated. There's real, you can go deep into stuff that normally wouldn't be accessible if you're in left brain beta consciousness, because it hasn't crossed the hemispheres. You need to coordinate both of them. So this is exactly.
Okay, I had some technical difficulties in that last video. At the end of this, the bandwidth got really bad. So forgive me, Robert. I know you're watching. I love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain everything. In the end, it was a great experience for me to experience ayahuasca. I found it enlightening, and yeah, if that's your thing, I would say you find the right shaman and enjoy the experience. And if you want to, you can follow Don Roberto. I'll put the link in the show notes below, at Spirit of the Amazon. And I wish you all the best. Thanks for being here. That's a wrap for today's Formidable Me. Kind of a mindset chapter today. Love you.